then, you know, you do your script and you figure out, you know, how close am I going to stay to this script anyway? You know, how real do you want to be?
Yeah, I don't usually write this stuff out, but...
No, I don't either. Hi there, I know your face from your from your politics. That's all. No, you come with a good rep. I don't think so. No, not at all. Not at all. So probably not. If we did, it would be through, I don't know, someone like Tom Fletcher is a friend. I have no idea. It might have been a public event. We lived in Coquitlam when he was in Maple Ridge. So, might have been that. Anyway, how long, are you just on Salt Spring overnight? Oh. So you don't get a holiday out of this? Timing, the 2 minutes is wicked. I mean, 3 you can handle, but 2 is like, give me a break.
Sure.
So I was practicing timing on what I've written. I'm not worried about the 5 minutes blah blah. I can, you know, I got way too much. I mean, it's just all gonna go by way too fast. And, and then the closing remarks in 2 minutes, I find that sort of the hardest. I want to talk about what's missing. And there's quite a bit missing. And what's missing means that it's going to be difficult for anyone to vote with the full information that's needed. It's too bad that the committee was used as a kind of rubber stamping body rather than what you should have been. And if I was in your shoes, I would have reacted in the same way, going, and I was telling someone here, I said, you know, I don't like being played. I just have trouble with being played. So even with the road numbers, when I'm going, wait a minute, I've done all this work and handed off all this information, and it's not being paid any attention to? Come on, how can they ignore the BC government's own numbers? As if they're mine, as if I own them. It's like, come on. I don't get it. Well, you do from the perspective of the BC government, of the Christy Clark BC government. If the NDP government would now, they would not even have had the study.
No.
And Gordon Campbell said no to it. It wasn't until Christie came in and there was a cabinet shuffle and then, oh look.
So should we get everybody to sit down?
Yeah, it's a good business deal for them. It's a hell of a good deal.
This doesn't come
thank
off,
you for
or
the
does it?
opportunity. You know, the important thing is that the whole evening for everyone goes well.
Testing.
Yeah, and I'm...
Just here to have fun. I said just here to have fun.
Thanks for all your work.
Oh, hey there. Nice to see you.
Hey, David. Greg. Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Could I get you to be the representative?
On their side?
Yeah.
No.
No. We'll do it over here. This will be to...
Yeah. Who kicks it off?
First on the 5 minutes, and we'll go back again after that. Call it. You want to
Oh, it
call
doesn't
it?
heads, whatever. Well, heads, whatever.
I guess you're team captain. You have to call heads.
No, I'm not team captain at all. Do they always have to call
Sitting at our table. Sounds like one of those situations where they're forcing you to do.
Well, I don't don't know which way that coin is weighted. I've never really, done a balance test on it to see. So, one side might have a little more of the. Heads is good. Doesn't matter to me. Heads is fine. I call heads. Yeah.
So you're going to be heads?
Pretty much everything I say is funny.
Sure. Does it matter? But this is for our opening intro. This is for the 5 minutes each. Can I have you do it? No, we'll have them go first. We get to say whatever. I mean, it's.
So it's going to go 5 and for my
Okay.
5. I think I'd do better.
Yeah.
Not for my questions.
Yeah. Good to meet you. Now, are you the Michael whose house? I have not met you before. Of course, I looked it up online. I read the article. It was a beautiful house.
Is that right?
Just,
So that way, if they tell you to sing.
It's quite amazing that you would do this. I mean,
Yeah, but then
I think we're pretty much there.
maybe this is a diversion.
It all kind of happened at once.
I'm still
working full time. Your name is?
I'm Brenda. And September 9th
Good
will
crowd, George. Good crowd.
seems
They're
like
wearing
forever.
buttons.
Yeah. Well, participated for me. I voted today.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people voted.
Quite crowded.
Well, as Arthur Black said, you got to do it as soon as you can because you might get hit by a bus tomorrow.
There you go.
That's not very positive.
If it's open, sometimes they don't allow
Okay,
access.
so
Good evening. Good evening.
we're up first.
We're going to start very shortly,
So we're up first now.
and if we can get settled in your seats, that would be great. Thank you.
Brenda wanted to go first, but Greg said no, let's go last.
Welcome, and thank you all for coming tonight. It's going to be very informative, and I expect at many points in time, very entertaining evening. For those I haven't met, I am Wayne McIntyre, and the Electoral Area Director for Salt Spring Island, commonly called the CRD Director, and other things too, depending on who I'm talking to. I'm one of your elected local government representatives, and it's a pleasure also to work with my fantastic colleagues, Trustees George Grams and Trustee Peter Grove. It's been a long journey for us. We've been working on this in various facets for 6+ years. It's hard to believe. And, I had dark hair, and George didn't have a beard, and what can I say? But I think we've had the first study done as a comparative of the two systems, and the second was a full incorporation study. But I think George really said it best recently. Sometimes it's been smooth, often bumpy, but always interesting. And believe it or not, we were still talking to each other. I think I'm correct. Is that right, guys? No? Okay, sorry. So for starters, I'd like to recognize the Incorporation volunteer committees. They've been incredible for a long period of time. As volunteers, hundreds of hours of meetings, providing informational material and answering endless questions, whether it's on the street or in formal meetings. It should be recognized that their efforts led the Incorporation Committee last November to recommend a referendum on governance, or we wouldn't be here today. Thank you. You've done a fantastic job on behalf of our community. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the very brave panelists. First of all, thank you for your participation. You all bring expertise and passion for Salt Spring to us tonight in presenting your views on Salt Spring governance and a position on incorporation, yes or no. There are 3 panelists representing the no side and 3 for the yes. First for the no side, Brenda Guild. On the yes side, Michael McAllister. For the no, Greg Clayton. For the yes, Ken Marr. For the no, Gary Holman. And last but not least, David Wood for the yes side. Thank you all and best of luck. We also have Dan Huang from Urban Systems here, and he'll explain his role later. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, George Abbott. George? George had the honor of serving for 17 years in local government, including roles as an electoral area director and chair of the Columbia-Shuswap Regional District, and as a counselor for the District of Sicamous. He also served for 17 years in the legislature, including as a minister responsible for local government. Welcome to Salt Spring, George. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Appreciate that very generous introduction. It's always wonderful to visit this particularly beautiful part of the world, and to me it is a tremendous honor to be invited to be moderator here tonight. I can tell you as a recovering politician that I'm always honored when people recognize that I'm still alive, never mind being asked to moderate an important event like tonight. So thank you very much. It is very much an honor. I've had the opportunity over the course of my time in elected office to deal with incorporation issues on a couple of occasions. Most recently in terms of being the minister responsible for local government, municipal affairs, and of course the ministry is charged with funding and supporting those processes where they're requested. More importantly, I was involved as a citizen of Sicamous in a couple of incorporation processes in the 1980s. The first one was defeated. The second one was approved. I voted yes on one occasion. I voted no on another occasion. So I did this so I could be balanced in my role here tonight, showing absolutely nothing but neutrality in terms of these important issues. These are difficult and complex issues. Incorporations are complex decisions for communities to make. It was for Sicamous. It will be for you as citizens of the community of Salt Spring. It was also in Sicamous, and I'm certain it is the case here as well, that it is not only a technical issue, it's also an emotional issue for all citizens of the community. Members of the community have different conceptions of what their community is, what it can be, what it should be. And those different conceptions do tend to make people feel emotional about that. So I understand that emotion, I respect that emotion, but one lesson certainly that I learned from Sicamous was that my neighbors tonight are also my neighbors tomorrow, regardless of whether they had formed a conclusion of yes or formed a conclusion of no, that they still remain your neighbors tomorrow just as they do tonight. So that's, I hope, an important guide to how we proceed tonight. My objectives tonight are really quite simple as moderator. I hope that you can emerge from tonight's debate with a clearer sense, feeling better informed about the important decision that lies ahead of you. Tonight will be a great success if in fact that's the case, that you feel better informed as you leave the meeting than you felt as you entered the meeting. I hope that to be the case. The incredibly capable and courageous debating teams that are in front of you tonight, I'm not going to declare a winner. No one is going to be declaring a winner, but they will all be winners if in fact you emerge tonight better informed about the important decision awaiting you as citizens of Salt Spring. So you can expect me to be rigorously, positively neutral through the night. There are relatively few rules here, but of course, civility, respect will be the watchwords for all of us here tonight to ensure that I get to leave Salt Spring at a time of my choosing, and I get to leave in one piece. All of which are hugely important to me. Less important, I must say, to my wife, who probably won't matter to her too much. So I want to say congratulations to the debaters for having the courage to step forward and articulate their positions on this. It's not an easy thing to do, and I congratulate them for them. We will, at every point, as we already have, welcome a respectful, appreciative round of applause, hand clapping for the submissions that are made. That being said, shouts, catcalls, disrespect of any form is expressly prohibited. I should mention to Gary, who's also been a resident of the legislature, we don't want any of the behaviors that would characterize the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia to be evident in this forum. That would be unfortunate. So, the debaters have been introduced. We did a coin toss here just a few moments ago. The no team won the coin toss. They elected to have the yes team proceed with the first 5-minute presentation. Then they will be alternating back and forth between the two sides with their initial presentation. So there's well, actually, what I'll do before I run through that, quickly, Dan, can you tell us a little bit about your role here tonight?
Great, thank you, George. Good evening, everyone. My name's Dan Wong. I'm senior planner and partner with Urban Systems. We were the firm that was engaged by a local volunteer committee to prepare the 2016 Incorporation study. Along with my colleague James Klukas, it's our privilege to work with the hardworking committee to prepare the Incorporation study and also engage with you, the community, over the course of the study process. Our goal has always been to provide you with impartial, objective information on the potential impacts of municipal incorporation. We were not here to sell either the yes side or the no side of the community debate. Rather, we were here to provide you with the background information that you need to make an informed decision on municipal incorporation. I've been involved in several governance studies throughout the province over my past 16 years at Urban Systems. Understandably, no incorporation study will perfectly predict potential future council decisions or other external factors that could affect a municipal budget or community plans. The study scope was limited to contrasting current service levels with the same service levels as a municipality. However, when working with the study committee, we also put some significant effort into outlining some various risks, opportunities, and uncertainties associated with both the status quo and the option of municipal incorporation. While our work on the study was completed last November, the CRD and Islands Trust elected officials requested that a representative from Urban Systems be present here tonight to function as a background resource. In this respect, my goal tonight is not to engage in debate with panel members from either side. Rather, my goal is simply to provide clarification where clarification is required and point you to the right information sources so that you can become more informed in advance of voting day. So thank you again for entrusting us with this work. Regardless of your personal views, we encourage you all to get informed, and please vote on September 9th. Thank you very much.
So thank you again, Dan. So the process here tonight is first going to be 5 minutes for each of the panelists to state their view. I should also note that after many visits to Treasury Board as Health Minister and Education Minister, it was determined irrefutably that I wasn't very good at counting. So George Grams has an iPad here tonight that is going to assist me in ensuring that 5 minutes is 5 minutes and not 5 minutes plus a bonus time where I'm launched into some thought in some other area. I will, after 5 minutes, and the panelists are not, of course, obliged to go 5 minutes. They can go whatever length of time they wish. But at 5 minutes, I will be in my invariably courteous yet precise way saying 5 minutes, and then 30 seconds later, I will advise them that their time has fully expired. So we're allowing you 5 minutes plus just a little bit more. I used to have difficulty clearing my throat in 5 minutes, so I sympathize with you in trying to present a complex message within that period of time as well. So there'll be 5:30. So that's the opening round, and that's going to take us, again, I'm no mathematician, but around 30 minutes. We then will be moving into a series of questions. And on those questions, as many members, if they want to split up the 2 minutes, they can do that, or one member on each side may wish to speak to it, whatever. Collectively, they're going to get 2 minutes to answer the question. Again, we're going to do this in a way that at 2 minutes, I will say 2 minutes, and then at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll advise that time's up. So hopefully that's all fair. And again, just as we are in the earlier part, we'll be alternating back and forth between yes and no. And that's it. That's simple. So with that, unless there is anything further, and I don't believe there is, again, as I noted earlier, on the coin toss, the yes team will commence with the first 5 minutes. So yes team, are you ready to undertake this important mission? Yes? Okay, let the 5 minutes begin now. Welcome, Team Yes.
Well, is this working? You can start, George. I get asked from time to time, as I'm sure you all do, what's the big deal about Salt Spring? And I say, well, you know, it's a beautiful place. It's got a great climate. I love the fact it's in Canada. And I like the friends that I've made here. I've made friends the like of which I will not have the chance to make again. But most of all, I like the community. I like the way that we care for each other. And I think I like what we have in common. We all, when we came here, we all had that feeling that we had come home. And that, I think, that those things that we have in common bind us together much more tightly than the things that separate us tend to divide us. It's hard to see that sometimes, particularly at times like this when we're debating a contentious issue, and we sort of live up to our reputation of being a difference of opinion surrounded by water. But I don't think that's who we are. I think that we are a community bound together by shared values and a grateful appreciation of being able to live in a place like Salt Spring. I think that's why we smile at each other in the street. If this goes the wrong way on September the 9th, I'm not going to be moving off the island, and I don't think anybody else is. I think that just tells us that what holds us together is in fact stronger than the passions that are arousing us right now, but they will pass. 15 years ago, I was the chair of the previous Incorporation Study Committee. It was a 3-year process, and by the end of that process, I and most, but definitely not all, but most of the members of that committee felt that incorporation was the way to go, that we would be in a better position to direct the future of the island if we incorporated. And the reasons are threefold. One is we have more tools at our disposal. We have things like business licenses, just as an example, that we don't have now. The second thing is we have access to resources we don't have now. And the third, and by far the most important, that's four, the third is that we have, under a municipality, the different agencies, the 8 different agencies that oversee governance on this island would be coordinated because they would be under one roof on Salt Spring Island. So here we are again, 15 years later, and what's the difference? What's changed? Well, I think a few things have changed, and we'll get into the details. But back then, it was suggested that there were other ways of getting control of our local government that we didn't have to incorporate. And a number of initiatives were talked about. And now, 15 years later, nothing has come of those. If really and truly those things existed, you would think that they were important enough for the people who've been in charge of us to do something about them. It has not happened. There is a tide in the affairs of men and women, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. We've all taken those tides at different stages of our life. One of those tides brought us to the shores of Salt Spring. There were risks, and it required courage, but we trusted ourselves. Now, as a community, we're being asked to look at an opportunity to take another tide. But this time, it's as a group, as a community. It is time for us to trust ourselves and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the first panelist for the No Team to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I did want to mention before we started that we do have our current MLA in the House, Adam Olson of the Green Party, and Adam is back there somewhere. I have a sordid history with Adam, but thanks very much for coming tonight. And thanks to the locally elected officials for providing this opportunity. Thanks to the Incorporation Committee for the hard work they've done, to Urban Systems, and of course to Mr. Abbott for helping facilitate the meeting. One thing I would add to the list of no-nos is that people shouldn't be throwing things, which has occurred on Salt Spring in Fulford Hall. Some of you may remember that, the OCP at Fulford Hall. I'm sure no one will be throwing things. So I wanted to start, and I'm a bit of a broken record on this, talking about the achievements that we've accomplished as a community, which in my view are unmatched anywhere in British Columbia, a community of our size, incorporated or not. We have achieved incredible things. And so I guess I want people to think about how the heck could we do that if we've got such a dysfunctional governance system. We have secured, since 2001, over $60 million in grants for green space protection. We protected over 5,000 acres of green space on Salt Spring since 2001. There's no other community of our size in British Columbia who can match that record. That, of course, includes Grace Islet, which Adam himself and I were both involved in, the protection of Grace Islet. Upgrades to sewer, water treatment systems, upgrades to the Lady Minto Hospital, creating or establishing a new indoor swimming pool and library. Affordable housing, we've been incredibly successful with for affordable housing on Salt Spring. Since in the past decade, over $14 million in funding secured from the CRD, federal government, provincial government, for about 8 projects of affordable housing units on Salt Spring, about 90 or so units, and there's another large number in the works. With CRD, there's a private proposal on Drake Road, community services. Altogether, projects that have either received funding and been established or are proposed, 280 units of affordable housing. Again, there's no other community, certainly within the CRD of our size, that can match that record. I can tell you on the Saanich Peninsula, the 3 municipalities on the Saanich Peninsula, we've established more affordable housing units, secured more funding than the 3 municipalities on the Saanich Peninsula put together. So how the heck do we do that if our governance system is so dysfunctional? I could go on. Public transit, an award-winning public transit system established in 2008. We've doubled our ridership. We've got the highest ridership of any community of our size in British Columbia. How do we do that if our governance system is so dysfunctional? So I want people to at least consider the fact that this community has achieved great things with this current governance system. David mentioned the quality of life here. It's second to none. We're not just the envy of British Columbia and Canada, but North America and the world. We're a mecca for artists and tourists. Well, how do we accomplish that with our dysfunctional governance system? It can be problematic. It can be frustrating getting projects off the ground here, but I've just listed a whole bunch that we've been able to achieve, despite the fact that we're so opinionated. We've got a level of citizen engagement and empowerment in this system of governance that, again, is unmatched. The degree of citizen engagement and voter power over spending decisions, it's actually higher than under an incorporated system, because you have to have referendums for everything. If you want to create a new service like public transit, you have to have a referendum. Voters have to approve. I would say that's actually more democratic. There are flaws in the system. We can address them. Ideas, and we'll be talking about these later, local community commission, the 4-trustee idea. I would disagree with David that nothing has been proposed or put forward in terms of alternatives. We did have a 4-trustee proposal that was unfortunately voted down in a referendum. Those possibilities are still open to us. We have all the tools necessary to meet the challenges that we have with respect to infrastructure, water, and that kind of thing. Municipalities aren't going to magically solve all of our issues. And you have to be careful about what we wish for. How much time do I have left, George? 30 seconds. And I can tell you, decisions are made here locally. As a CRD director, I can tell you that the CRD board always supported the recommendations that I brought, the budget decisions that I brought to the CRD board. The local trust committee, all of our decisions are made here locally. And let's not forget, the province is not a neutral party in this discussion. They have an interest in downloading roads and policing onto unincorporated areas. And it's not a win-win situation, it's win-lose. The liabilities that we are considering taking on are huge and will only increase in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll now invite the second panelist from Team Yes, please.
Thank you, George. Our community has been offered something very exciting. We've been offered the opportunity to make local decisions with inclusive and broad representation, transparency and democracy that's currently lacking in our system. The last time we were offered this opportunity was 15 years ago. Our taxes were just over $4.2 million then. 15 years later, they're almost $13 million. We need to take hold of this opportunity and vote yes and become an island municipality before our taxes triple again. I'm going to talk a little bit about police, fire, and water tonight, and why we need a municipality to more effectively govern these agencies. In our local police detachment here, under a municipality, we will pay for 70% of the costs of policing, but we only pay for the costs of policing that we actually get. Often we're understaffed in our current detachment, but we still pay the full shot for policing. In a municipality, if we're understaffed by 1 or 2 or 3 officers, we will enjoy the savings. On Salt Spring, we use an old form of governance called improvement districts to look after our fire and water decisions for our largest water district. Improvement districts were not created to govern agencies as large as Salt Spring Fire and North Salt Spring Water. They were created to assist neighborhood groups to make decisions around common assets like a shared well, Not a single improvement district has been created in the province of British Columbia in the last decade. Salt Spring Island Fire and North Salt Spring Water have clearly outgrown this version of governance, and they need to work together within a single board authority that a municipality offers so that they can effectively and efficiently govern those jurisdictions. We need senior government grants to move forward on some $28 million in water infrastructure upgrades and $5 or more million for a new main fire hall. Improvement districts cannot receive direct grants for infrastructure projects. While the municipality of Bowen Island just received $3.9 million to fund 80% of their water infrastructure project. And I think we'd like some of that money, please. In 2006, the provincial government issued a white paper denouncing the transparency of improvement districts and encouraged their dismantling. Our fire board currently allows employees to sit as employers, as trustees on the board, and act with two hats and make decisions around their coworkers and their superior officers. And that's not a professional way to manage a professional organization like our fire district. Our water board allows people to sit as trustees and be elected as trustees who cannot even vote in water issues. Improvement district boards are not required to have open meetings. They do not practice the regular transparency of governance. And that was a commonplace occurrence for our fire district for many years. Renters are not allowed to participate in referendums or trustee elections for improvement districts, while some businesses get an extra vote. And that's simply not fair and not democratic. Improvement districts are an archaic and feudal form of governance. They're not democratic, they're not transparent, nor inclusive. We have 15 community water systems on this island with very limited planning or coordination with each other or other local government agencies. The largest system is North Salt Spring Water, and it's responsible to supply potable water to over 5,500 residents of our island and most of the businesses and institutions as well. A moratorium on water hookups was announced a few years ago. The effect was to stall an affordable housing project after we spent hundreds of thousands of tax dollars in studies. The same moratorium made our trust decision to legalize secondary suites virtually ineffective. This moratorium was done without consultation with other government agencies, nor with the community. Although we were in an area of excess water for 8 months of the year and scarcity for the other 4, we do not have the ability to strengthen our building code requirements to require rainwater storage nor recycling gray water. Some of our fire hydrants may or may not function well, and some of our mains may be compromised if our fire trucks take too much at once. And we have to ask, who is responsible? We currently have very little prospect to undertake a comprehensive and coordinated approach to our water needs and tailor our land use zoning within the capacity of our finite resources. We need a system that brings
5
fire,
minutes, 30 seconds.
Water, housing, land planning, building inspection, and all of our other local agencies together under one umbrella, and the only way to do it is with a municipality. We need to bring our governance home to a rural island municipality within the trust, where we make decisions for our entire community in a democratic, transparent, and inclusive form of government, an island municipality. Thank you.
And thank you. I'll now invite the second panelist from Team No.
Since I'm the only woman here, I guess I better stand up tall on behalf of all of you who've come out, and everyone, of course. You know, I grew up in a small town, Jasper National Park, very nice. We can't all live in a park, and I can tell you all the reasons why. But I then left my small town in high school, and I didn't have a town for a lot of years. I lived in cities, and I'll tell you, coming back here and realizing I have a town again, and you're my town, I can't tell you what a joy it is. I applied to do this debate out of a sense of real pleasure and privilege, just to be in a room with my town. And in the town that I grew up in this one, yeah, there were all sorts and stripes and opinions and whatnot, but you know, at the end of the day, we work out how to work things out and we get things done. And we're going to do this in terms of all of our governance structure as well. My reasons for voting no are the core reasons have to do with keeping Islands Trust operating as it's intended. Of course, it's to preserve and protect, and that's its mandate. But what is the means by which it does that? And the means by which it does it is it separates land use and zoning from service delivery. It's the one thing, the only thing the municipality can't offer. I like the direct democracy of here, that yes, we've had increases in our taxes, and all of the increases above a given requisition, we've gotten through assent mechanisms to do it. All local governments can do this. You can either have a referendum or you can do the, alternative approval process. And yes, we have used both of them. A municipality can as well. I know enough about our current form of governance to know that we have all the tools that we need to shape it in order to make it work for us. There's tools in the great workshop of local government that we haven't used yet, and we can sharpen them up, we can bring them out. And another reason for voting no is there's no turning back on good advice. I'm told that a municipality is a done deal. You don't undo it. In 1883 they did. The MLA just went to the Legislative Assembly and said, you know, it's not seeming to work, let's undo it, and it was undone. It's not that simple, it won't work now. As a lot of people here know, I've spoken out about roads, and we have to keep in mind all the time we have 2.3 times more roads per capita than any comparable communities. And one thing that we need to remember too is that, you know, nearly every BC community has MOT at the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure roads leading to and through their community. So they still have an MOTI presence. And those roads are very key to those communities. We can't even walk, cycle, or drive to Salt Spring for free. And MOTI would stop having any presence here whatsoever. That would make us a very unusual community in British Columbia with a lot of roads. As I've spoken out about the road cost figures in the Incorporation study report don't square with the BC government figures that I did Freedom of Information requests to get. Those are not Brenda's figures. There's nothing personal in them. They're just numbers that I got from the government, and they're quite incomplete. And another thing that I was able to do was to look into the real road costs of Bowen Island's roads, and that's what they actually spend on their roads, and that wasn't included in the Incorporation study report. Bowen Island has discovered, and we have to remember that they have an average household income above the BC average. Salt Springs is 10 to 15% below the BC average, and we'd have more roads per capita that are in bad shape, that have been ignored in part because of this ongoing incorporation discussion. I'll explain that a little more when we get to the roads question. So should we incorporate? I guarantee we're in for sticker shock regarding our roads. $33.5 million worth of work is needed to be done right now. And we've been given a total transition offer, funding offer of $20 million. How does $20 million stack up against more than $30 million needed in roadworks right now? But you know, I'm really, really grateful to the incorporation study process because it makes us aware of all of these things. So we're much more able to use the tools of governance.
5-minute warning, 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. In our current system. And now we've got all this information on our roads. We can hold MOTI to its responsibilities here. And I want to assure everybody that I've been very proactive about roads for a long time, in particular through Island Pathways. And I will continue, believe me, to be proactive about our roads and improving our governance. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the final panelist on the yes side.
Thank you for this opportunity. However, I have to say at the outset that holding a lawyer to 5 minutes speaking is just cruel, to say anything of impossible. But I'll carry on. I am not part of the yes team. I met these gentlemen 10 days ago. I didn't read the Incorporation study until yesterday, after having prepared my notes for tonight, what I wanted to say. I'm here because the last 30 years, I've worked exclusively for local governments around the province of British Columbia. Our firm is the lawyer, or 5 lawyers, for Bowen Island, and has been the lawyers for Bowen Island since day one. I also do some work for BC Housing in the local government context for the last 10 years. So I'm here based on that experience, and I firmly believe it's in the best interest of this community moving forward to vote yes. I agree with Gary. Great things have been done on this island, but I'll tell you, there's an opportunity that you don't want to miss, and that's incorporating this island into a municipality. I'm going to tell you why. Don't believe me. Let me tell you why. I'm going to talk about taxes, development, affordable housing, and most importantly, governance. I'm not going to do that all in 5 minutes. I'm going to start with taxes. Bowen Islands has been incorporated since 1999. The municipal portion of property taxes on Bowen Island has increased annually between 1.7 and 2.7%. That's well in the range of what other governments increase their taxes by in any given year. The first 5 years of Bowen's existence as a municipality, it had to go to 3% per year. Various reasons for that I can explain later. More importantly, and this will be of special interest to seniors and those who may be on fixed income, property taxes have gone up on Salt Spring Island under the current regime 2% per year for every year, more than on Bowen, for every year that Bowen has been incorporated. Salt Springs taxes in the last 18 years have gone up 36% more than what Bowen Island's taxes have gone up. We'll come back and discuss a number of these things in detail. On Salt Spring, and the reason is, on Salt Spring, there are currently multiple taxing authorities all working independently and for the most part off-island. They're making the decisions about taxing off-island. David is going to speak more on farms and roads, but the point I want to make here is that under a municipality, taxes would be set by one government after considering the priority of the whole community. Everybody is working in silos right now. The 8 different governments, the 15 different governments, I don't even remember what the number is, they're working in silos independently. I want to talk about governance. This is the most important part of my presentation. I believe I got elected to the North Salt Spring Water District in May because of something I said to the newspaper. Decisions about Salt Spring should be made on Salt Spring, not off Salt Spring. It's happening, and it's time for a change. Decision making. You know, Salt Spring is the largest unincorporated area by population in the province of British Columbia. Of the 162 municipalities in this province, 117 municipalities are smaller or the same size as Salt Spring. It's time. We're big enough to support a local government. Islands Trust, 24 trustees. Salt Spring pays 40% of the pot. We all know we don't get 40% of the value, even on the planning function. It's been said that the Islands Trust will have a $550,000 shortfall. That's $550,000 that now will stay on the island to be spent however your municipal council determines. The good news is you can spend it or you not spend it. Taxes, I'll come back to that, are up to you.
5-minute warning, 30 seconds to sum up, please.
On roads, wouldn't it be nice to own your own roads and make decisions about your roads? Wouldn't it be nice to set the standards of your roads? You can say whatever you want about roads, but a municipal government gets to select the standards. They don't have to do it to provincial standards. Pave them with gold. Yeah, you'll pay. Have a lesser standard? You won't pay. The council will set the priority. There are 26 board members on the CRD, and they're all vying for the limited resources, both financial resources and staff resources. Happy to hear Gary say that you know.
Unfortunately, time is running out.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'll be back.
Thank you. And I'll now invite the final panelist on the no side to make his presentation. Good job.
Thank you. Looking across the table, I agree with my esteemed colleagues on one thing. We want change. We see affordable housing issues that permeate municipalities across the West Coast and much of this country. We see government bureaucracies that don't represent minorities and are not accountable. We see a desire that is becoming desperate to break the cycle, to try something new. But I offer you this. This deal from the province is being offered at a time when we find ourselves in relationship with the Islands Trust for 44 years. Like many deep-rooted relationships, we might find ourselves dreaming of something fresh and new, having lost touch with the core of what it is that allowed us to grow and become. Just say yes, they say. Try something else. But if we jump, we will soon learn that what we had and loved is gone, and that the new version has different troubles. This is not the real relationship change that we desire. This is not the savior to our systemic problems that exist to our governance systems. It's only when we end up in the new relationship will we realize that we had it better than the millions of other people who already have municipal relationships. I sat on the Incorporation Study Committee, eager to learn how this island was governed and excited for the prospect of community-directed change. But I was disappointed meeting after meeting. The province was not consultative in their process. They never asked the community or the committee how Salt Spring Incorporation or governance should look. They ignored what makes Salt Spring unique. They could have asked us what it would take for Salt Spring to incorporate. And they could have played with variables, like the delineation of the study area. Like, why not incorporate just Ganges? The roads, why not designate an interprovincial highway like every other municipality save Bowen Island? They didn't bother because they are in the business of downloading services and liabilities. There might be an incorporated model that this island could support, but this deal is not in our best interest. It's fundamentally flawed on several levels, which you will hear tonight. I think we can all agree that there's something that makes Salt Spring different, and it's not just that we're all amazing people living by the ocean. We owe our difference to the current and distinctive governance structure. It's unique, like the feeling you got when you first moved or arrived here. And so we have an opportunity now to lead the Gulf Islands, this province, and this country. We can embrace a structure that is uncommon and beloved for what it has preserved and protected. The unique structure is one where government service delivery is separate from land use and development decisions. We have broad democracy. Citizen engagement here is unparalleled. It provides the opportunity for many voices, and with many voices come some inefficiencies. But what we are being offered is a system where 4 of 7 will take nearly exclusive responsibility for police, fire, water, roads, bylaws, land use planning, and much more. When you concentrate and consolidate power, empowered council is the tagline adopted by my colleagues, you open yourself up to spheres of influence. Decisions will be made faster. Without as much input, we tout efficiency, the corporate model, but we forget that municipalities are the disease that the Islands Trust was designed to cure in 1974. People have asked if I will run for mayor or council should we incorporate, and I say, please vote no, I don't want to. Even as mayor, I would be forced with pressure to develop the tax base to meet massive fiscal obstacles. David Wood suggested in his video that there's never been a pro-development candidate on this island, and he may be correct, but the system is inherently pro-development. We are voting in a little over a week on a deal we have not seen. The governing document, known as the letters patent, was assured by the province to be delivered to the study committee and the community prior to a vote. In a protocol agreement with the Islands Trust, they assured that this document would be provided with plenty of time for feedback. I mean, why not? It's like the government just posted an apartment for rent on the exchange and then is handing us a blank standard residential lease with the term, names, address, and responsibilities intentionally left blank while asking us to sign it. Trust us, they say, without even saying it. We have a new minister, a new government, and no idea what we are actually agreeing to on a legal basis. Any astute business person would never sign a contract without seeing it, as we are asked to do on September 9th. Lastly, I'm trained as a financial analyst, and I look at incorporation like this. If we vote no, worst case scenario, nothing changes. Not that terrible in my opinion. I really love this place. But if we vote yes, the risk is significant. Are you willing to roll the dice with this island and what it offers our children and those who visit? Thank you.
Hey.
So let me say, first of all, a thank you to all of the panelists for, I think, their invariably constructive and thoughtful remarks, and much appreciated undoubtedly by all attending here tonight. We're entering the second portion of our evening now. In this case, questions will be posed by me, the moderator, to both teams. Each team will have 2 minutes to answer each question. They can designate one person to answer the question, or if 3 of them are quick enough, I suppose they can all contribute to a 2 to 2.5 minute answer. That will be entirely up to them. Again, after 2 minutes, I'll remind them that the time is up, but again, provide another 30 seconds for the summing up. In this section, again, we will start, the question will be first going to the yes side with a 2-minute response or 2-minute answer from the no side, then alternating to no, yes, yes, no, etc., through hopefully all of the 14 questions that have been prepared for tonight. I think at some point, somewhere around 9:15, the organizers of this event have carelessly left some decision-making in my hands. I'll probably seek your assistance on whether you are missing your favorite episode of Seinfeld and must get home, or whether you want to continue to work through. We'll talk about that when we get here, and we'll trust in extraordinary efficiency to get us there. So the first question, again, for both sides, and this question is of a general character. What are the reasons to become or not become an island municipality? Yes, side.
Thank you. There are many, many reasons to become an island municipality. We can have local budget decisions, true democracy, understandable, simple, and small government, prioritization and coordination of services, transparency, the ability to get direct access to senior government grants, the ability to manage our water resources locally, the ability to have broad and inclusive representation, and the ability to enforce bylaws such as our safety around the local burning bans. Currently, we represent 40% of the entire trust area, and we contribute 40% of the taxes to the trust. Yet we have less than 8% of the vote at Trust Council. We have one person on a board of 24 in the CRD, and that's where the priority decisions are made for most of our services, and they're made in Victoria. Trust Council, where their budget decisions are made, rarely made on Salt Spring. I think it's every 4 or 5 years they come here. A municipality gives us access to smaller, local, less complicated, more efficient, and an understandable system that's accessible to all islanders. A municipality has the ability to prioritize and coordinate projects under one council and one budget locally as compared to our current system, which is, quite frankly, a complicated dog's breakfast. A municipality can assess our needs and desires and make decisions with a visionary plan for the future for the benefit of our entire community.
30 seconds to sum up, please.
Stack this all up against our current system, and there's an obvious answer. And I encourage you to vote yes for an island municipality so our community can access all of these benefits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to add? I'll now invite a two-minute response to the question from the no side.
Thank you. First, I believe that the main reason to become a municipality is a bit of an illusion. It's an illusion that if we consolidate power into the hands of a few, as Ken says, smaller government, we will be better off. That we'll somehow be better represented by 7 people than the dozens that currently serve on boards and commissions. Small government does not mean representative government. It's simply not true that decisions on this island are being made by people in Victoria. If you believe that a Salt Spring Municipal Council will not somehow waste taxpayer money on services and processes that you don't agree with, I challenge you to find me an example of one, because I don't know if they exist. Bowen Island just borrowed money to build a fire hall, something they dreamed of 18 years ago when they incorporated. It's wishful optimism to believe that our challenges with government problems will be solved somehow by simply concentrating power into a municipal model that fails to represent people and to be truly accountable to their electorate all over the globe. The truth is that the municipal model of government has its many own problems, problems that might not be on the forefront of our minds, especially if we've been here for a long time. Second, we need to recognize that the province is downloading massive liabilities in this offer. I was in the business of corporate finance for 10 years, and it's simple but also complex. The significant tax base of Salt Spring Island provides lenders security so that a municipal council can leverage its tax base. So a municipal government can borrow money, knowing that it has the tax base to repay it. They can use this pay for infrastructure, which allows them to increase the tax base. So they can borrow more money and pay for more infrastructure. And the cycle continues, all while allowing the provincial government to offload the risk and responsibility. Lastly, Salt Spring Island is unique in this world. We cannot lose sight of that. Development decisions are controlled by the island's trust, are not influenced by service liabilities mentioned above. This is something that needs to be cherished and protected. And to address one thing that Ken had mentioned, and
30
that's
seconds, please.
I know that budgets, I know Gary has spoken a lot about this, that as CRE director, that not once something that he took to his body in Victoria was ever turned down. He was able to bring forward what he felt was best for this community, the budget that he felt for this community, and when it was supported every single time.
Great, thank you very much. I have a second question now, and on this occasion I'll be inviting the no side to respond with a 2-minute answer first. How do you see the impact of your preferred form of governance on property taxes?
Yes, thanks for the question. First, I want to address the historical tax increases that have come up on the east side. The main difference, I think, between tax increases on Bowen and Salt Spring is that Salt Spring has actually approved, voters have approved, a significant number of new services and new facilities, and I went through some of them in my introductory remarks. When I was CRD director, we had 10 referenda on Salt Spring, 5 for various water districts, so they could get infrastructure funding, which the SIs we said we can't get, and also for things like the pool, the library land, public transit, a new art service, funding for search and rescue. So again, the notion that somehow decisions are made about tax increases off island. In fact, on Salt Spring, we have voters have very direct control over that, more control than municipalities, because municipalities can, in some circumstances, borrow money without taxpayer approval. They can create services without taxpayer approval. They can shift the tax burden from property classes. For example, on Bowen, one of the first things they did as a municipality was effectively shift taxes from the commercial sector to residential. So be careful what you wish for there. The key thing about the no side is, as Greg was saying, and we've all been saying, is we avoid the downloading of 265 kilometers of poorly built roads and policing. And by the way, the additional policing costs identified by the consultant, we think they've been underestimated, are almost $900,000 a year. And we believe also the road costs, the incremental road costs to Salt Spring have been underestimated as well. But that's the main financial impact that would happen on Salt Spring, and a no vote avoids that. That's the main implication for tax impacts of changing our governance.
Thank you very much. I'll now invite the yes side for their 2-minute answer to the question. Thank you.
I'm going to just respond to Gary on a couple of things. On the $60 million he says that our community has gotten in grants in the last 15 years or so, $30 million was to do with tax aid of lands. That would have happened whether we were a municipality or we had our fractured governance. $5 million was for the hospital, and I beg to say that a municipality might have gotten more. Maybe they wouldn't have, but I think we may be down to $25 million in grants if we get down to there. As well, voter-approved tax increases since in the last 15 or 16 years has amounted to $2 million per year on our island, and our taxes have gone up $9 million per year, and Michael will continue.
Thank you. If you do not incorporate, you'll be left with multiple levels of government taxing you independently without any coordination of priority. They're all doing their own thing. How can you expect anything but those taxes will go up as they do the best, but they're not coordinated? The point is that if you do incorporate it, tax decisions will be made by a locally elected council interested only in one thing, Salt Spring Island. They will decide whether taxes go up, go down, or stay the same. It applies to roads. I said that earlier. Bowen Island, yes, they took some burden off commercial, put it on residential. You know what they did on farming? They taxed it at half the residential rate. The tax on Bowen for farm represents 0.01% of the total tax base. That's what a local government can do. There's concern about farms and tax increases. It doesn't have to be. The council will make the call. Up, down, or the same.
30 seconds, please.
So the ability to set priorities after looking at everything a municipality is responsible for is critical. Local accountability, local control. Local governments, municipalities, have to prepare a 5-year financial plan. They have to plan ahead for the whole island. Everything that we're talking about here, water, fire, sewer, all of that, they have to incorporate into a 5-year plan that you all get to see and comment on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with our pattern of alternation, the yes side will be first invited to answer this question. What do you see as the major impact on the island's trust of becoming a municipality? Yes side, please.
Thank you, George. I'm quoting here, if I can find it. Yeah. This is a quote from an Islands Trust study of the possible impact of an incorporation on Salt Spring. It says, the possible incorporation of Salt Spring Island is a significant event, but it is not a threat to the existence of the Islands Trust. There is one impact on the Islands Trust of an incorporation by Salt Spring, and that is it will have to downsize its planning department. Right now, there are 9 people employed in the Islands Trust office on Salt Spring that will have to either change jobs or go somewhere else because that local planning will be taken over by the municipality. Now, those people could apply for those jobs, but that department will go. This is at the end of a 3-year period. This is a 3-year transition. It's likely that some people in the Victoria Planning Office will go because they will have to downsize too. And the reason for that is simply that support for the Islands Trust, the money we pay to them, is based on our the assessed value of the property on Salt Spring, which is higher than on all other islands. So we pay a disproportional amount of the Island Trust budget. Under Incorporation, we no longer pay for planning services. That disproportional amount is no longer paid, and we so they have to, basically, the other islands have to pay for what they get. I gather it's around $37 a year for the average property. The LTC on Salt Spring, the impact on Salt Spring is that the LTC is dissolved, the local trust council, and instead we have a 7-person
30
mayor and
seconds,
council.
please.
Yeah. We have a 7-person mayor and council, all of whom live and are elected on Salt Spring, as opposed to a 3-person LTC, 2 of whom are elected on Salt Spring, and 1 of whom is not. The third thing to bear in mind is that the trustees are still directly elected by the people of Salt Spring. They are not appointed by council. And the last point is that the Preserve and Protect mandate is alive and well under a municipality. It is part of our letters patent. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite the no side for their answer to the question.
Awesome, thank you. David got one, but I've got a couple more. And that quote's not specific to Salt Spring because the trust is threatened on this island. You may have heard from others that the trust is not weakened, and that's a matter of perception, so decide for yourself, but these are the facts. First, we dissolved the local trust committee where the trust is represented by 3 out of 3 trustees to being represented by 2 out of 7 trustee councillors on a municipal council. Second, the Islands Trust will no longer have a Salt Spring office, and their operating budget will shrink by almost $1 million. That's about 20%. Would your business be weakened by a 20% reduction in revenue? Third, the provincial government has written themselves a veto over any land use or over any Islands Trust decision. And while my colleagues will note that this has never been used on Bowen Island yet, I ask you why then it is part of the deal. Fourth, and most importantly, development decisions and changes to the official community plan will be made with regard to the Preserve and Protect mandate. This is legally and fundamentally different than the development decisions being made bound to the Preserve and Protect mandate as it is now. That's not alive and well in my mind. I can also offer you this. Separation of land use and development planning from government service delivery that was established by the Islands Trust Act in 1974 is the single largest reason why Salt Spring looks and feels different. And such, it is the single largest risk we take by voting yes, by giving density and development control to the same group of people that is tasked with balancing costs for police, fire, roads, and other community services. We take away one of the most brilliant protections that exists in land development in this country. A protection that ensures we don't develop land for money here, that we are not influenced by infrastructure liabilities when we contemplate increasing density and development.
30 seconds, please.
So what do you think? Is the trust weakened?
Thank you very much. With the again the relentless pattern of alternation here, we are moving to question 4, and I'll be inviting the no side to first answer question number 4, and that is, what are the strengths and weaknesses of a local community commission? No side.
Well, thanks. This idea, concept, in fact, is allowable under existing legislation. I want to acknowledge the work that Richard Kerr has done on the local community commission. There are a number of advantages, and I don't see any downsides, really. So it would broaden representation, complaint of folks who support incorporation. So in addition to the CRD director, you would elect 4 or 6 community commission members at large. So they would be elected at large. They would be able to share the workload of the director, facilitate coordination and integration of all of the CRD services. It would strengthen the case for bringing North Salt Spring and the fire district into the CRD. Both have indicated that they would be willing to consider that. The Water District has expressed a preference for municipality, but they have indicated they would pursue coming to the CRD. And an LCC would strengthen that argument. As Greg said, the CRD board always has supported the CRD director proposals for budgeting. If you had an LCC, that would make that even more so the case. So it addresses a number of the concerns we have around governance that the pro-incorporation side raises without the downside of weakening the trust and taking on that huge liability of 265 kilometers of roads. And it's reversible. Unlike incorporation, if we walk through that door, it closes behind us. If we implement a local community commission and pursue the 4 trustee idea on the trust side of things, and it doesn't work out, we can revisit incorporation. The reverse of that is not true. Now, an LCC would require negotiation with the CRD. It would require an establishment bylaw to be struck to determine the mandate, responsibilities, composition of a local community commission. We've done this before a number of times with the Transportation Commission. It's the same
30
process.
seconds, please.
And that bylaw would have to be approved by voters on Salt Spring. So it addresses a number of the concerns around governance. And you know, on our side, we agree. Some of those concerns are valid. We can address them without taking on the risks of incorporation in terms of the impact on the trust and taking on 265 kilometers of poorly built roads.
Thank you. I'll now invite the yes side to provide their response to the question.
Well, with respect, local community commissions are a red herring. They're being presented as an alternative. Yes, legally, they're an alternative. But in my view, it's just another way of saying, vote no to incorporation. I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that. First of all, I've calculated, because they're hard to find, that there are 4 LCCs in the province of British Columbia. Population of those, between 150 and 200 people each. Geography, they're very remote, generally speaking. There's one that's a bit closer to civilization. They are not a legal entity. They're created by Capital Regional District bylaw. They exist solely at the will of the Capital Regional District and can be just as easily removed by the Capital Regional District. The ministry is not considering them at this point. They've said that. Take another referendum or alternative approval process to get an LCC on Salt Spring. I understand that this whole issue came up in 2002. It seems to come up when we talk about incorporation as a possible alternative. It's an alternative, but it's not a good one for this island. It further puts power into an off-island entity. Actually.
Thanks, Michael. This did not come up in 2002, but it did come up in 2003. Our CRD director in 2003 said he was looking into local community commissions. That same CRD director was in power for 5 full years thereafter, and we have seen no progress on LCCs in our community. In fact, it's been 15 years since our last vote no decision in 2002. 3 CRD directors, none of them have made any progress whatsoever in LCCs. It's a non-option, it's a red herring. It's the same thing as all the advertisements back in 2002 that we're going to improve our governance, we're going to tweak our system. Folks, it's a red herring. Fooled us once, it's not going to happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, question 5, goes again as we alternate to the yes team. First, would integrated planning change with incorporation? Yes team.
First of all, I had to figure out what the question meant. Would integrated planning change with incorporation? I think it's a question about general governance. Integrated planning, all in one location, is that better? I think it is. So currently we have multiple jurisdictions doing their best, but working in silos. They don't talk to each other as much as they maybe should, but they don't have to. So they're all working in silos. The only way to break down those silos is to have all of those municipal type services under one roof. The only way that can happen is with a municipality. The ability to coordinate services, deal with taxes, all of it comes from an integrated planning. Strategic planning. Local governments, municipalities have to come up with a strategic plan for the future of the entire island. Who do you want doing that? Individual groups in silos, or one group that can speak for all of you? Local accountability, local representation, bylaws, budgets, all of these things get taken care of with an integrated planning that comes only with a local government, with a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now invite the no side for their answer.
Well, thanks. Well, it might be surprising to some, but integrated planning actually does happen now. So let's think of some examples. The trust, when it considers a rezoning proposal, it makes referrals to all of the affected agencies, both local, provincial, even federal, First Nations, those agencies make recommendations about terms and conditions on the rezoning, and they have to be met before the rezoning is passed. So there's an example right there, real world, integrated planning by the Islands Trust. This is what the trust does. The same with MOT on subdivision approval. They make referrals to various agencies, including the trust, including CRD entities, and those, they seek out recommendations from those agencies about terms and conditions on subdivision approval. So it already does happen. On the service side of things, the CRD, there's absolutely no reason why on the CRD side of things, through the director or potentially through a local community commission, you can't have, and those agencies already do talk to one another. For example, the CRD contracts North Salt Spring Water District to operate CRD water districts. There's an example of integration. The MOT provides the right-of-way, and Parks and Rec provides the maintenance for the pathways that the Transportation Commission has created, which, by the way, is a huge success on this island. Another example, Fernwood and Highland Water District shared the cost of a new state-of-the-art dissolved air flotation treatment plant. So there's another example of cooperation and integration. People are talking to one another on this island, not just among themselves, but among the various agencies that deliver services here. The Ganges Sewer Commission and the Liquid Waste Commission in Burgoyne Bay, they have membership on each one of the committees, so they're talking to one another. The Water Council and SWIPA are examples of integrating provincial and federal agencies into decision making. So there's lots of examples there, and there's absolutely no reason why Salt Spring can't have a strategic plan, sustainability planning, and let's bring North Salt Spring and the Fire District into the CRD so they can get better access to grants so renters can vote.
Thank you. Our sixth question, and again we'll be returning to the no team for the first response here. The question is, would a municipality be better able to deliver affordable housing than the status quo? No team.
So I want to go back to Salt Spring's record in terms of affordable housing. For a community of our size, and certainly within the regional district, we've been incredibly successful. I think I mentioned before, you know, those grants that we can't get. Well, $14 million in grants from the CRD, from the federal government, from the provincial government to establish affordable housing on Salt Spring. The most recent example of that is Crofton Brook, which between the CRD and other senior grants got $5.5 million to build 52 units of affordable housing on the Crofton Brook site. There are a number of other projects being actively planned in the Drake Road area. In total, already established and planned units, about 275 units over the last decade for affordable housing. We have all the tools in terms of land use authority, the ability to upzone land, the access to grants, which we've been very successful at getting, and also very important, very capable nonprofit societies who basically have historically been building affordable housing on Salt Spring. So we've had demonstrated success on this file, and we have the same tools that a municipality does. The trust itself has been very supportive. My understanding is they've legalized suites on 2,000 properties on Salt Spring. They require them to be in or near villages or close to transit, which is a good planning approach, and they're considering doing more. They insist on housing agreements, which are a covenant on title that ensures affordability in perpetuity. Those agreements are crucial, and that's why it's important for nonprofits to be involved, because they want to have those housing agreements as well. So our land use authority has been very proactive, very supportive of affordable housing. The North Salt Spring moratorium, a number of the projects that I just referred to, including Crofton Brook, have been affected by that moratorium.
30 seconds, please.
They are pursuing alternative water sources, basically drilling wells, but also looking at aggressive water conservation, rainwater catchment. It's not been an impediment to establishing, and won't be an impediment to establish affordable housing, even in the North Salt Spring District, which has a moratorium, and it's not around governance. The moratorium is because of a physical constraint of water supply. That's the reason why we have it, not because of our governance system.
Thank you. I'll now invite the yes team for their answer to the question.
As I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of work with BC Housing, and I can tell you that in my experience, 70–80% of all projects that BC Housing approves, certainly that I've worked on, the land component comes from the local government. So the local government provides the land. The municipality provides the land. We know that the Islands Trust can't because they can't own land. They can't even lease land. The local trust committee can't do either. And certainly it's not been a priority for...
Please.
That's my understanding.
Please.
Affordable housing at the Capital Regional District level is a regional function. Again, we're up, and I'm not doubting the good work that has been done, but I am of the view that with local government in charge, with a municipality in charge, there'd be more opportunities for affordable housing. We're up against City of Victoria, their homeless issue, their affordable housing issues. We're up against Greater Victoria municipalities fighting for the same dollars. Fighting doesn't have to be, if you're the local government and you're in charge, You're the ones making decisions for Salt Spring.
Thanks, Michael. And Gary, thanks for bringing up a couple of the projects there. In regards to the secondary suites, our local trust committee went through considerable effort to enact bylaws to allow secondary suites. And North Salt Spring Waterworks was consulted in that.
30 seconds, please.
Their reply signaled that they had no concerns meeting the extra demand. 13 months after the bylaw became law, North Salt Spring issued a moratorium on hookups without any consultation with any of our local government jurisdictions or the trust or the CRD or the community. This made the work by our trust committee almost worthless. So if you want to talk about integration of systems, it simply is not working. Yes, the Trust Council can own property. They own a chunk up on Denman Island. They have no intention and they have no ability really to move forward with affordable housing. It's not a priority. It's not about the preserve and protect mandate. Further, our Drake Road affordable housing project, North Salt Spring Waterworks advised the CRD that they would provide a supply of potable water. After we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars studying
Time's
it,
up,
it got mired in bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the seventh question to be posed to the two panels tonight is this. Salt Spring Island faces some serious infrastructure challenges. Which form of governance is best equipped to resolve these? And again, in our alternating pattern, back to the yes side.
A municipality is clearly much better equipped to deal with our infrastructure problems. I've heard that we can get grants, and we have gotten grants in the past, but we would have direct access to grants. We would be able to prioritize them as a community, rather than depending on a board in Victoria to prioritize them for us. We can prioritize our needs and our wants as far as our infrastructure projects go, and make decisions with a holistic approach to the entire island. We can retain control of priorities and applications locally and make our decisions here. We must deal with a new fire hall. We must deal with it soon. And we also must deal with $28 million in water infrastructure projects. There are roads, sewer, recreational facilities, the list goes on. In our current system, there is no plan to deal with these things. It's a silo government system. They all operate independently. A municipality can provide the ability and the tools to make plans to prioritize our projects as we all see fit. And it can coordinate various agencies and interests to make better decisions for our community as a whole. It can provide better chances to receive grants and complete projects efficiently, effectively, and on budget, with our needs in mind first as a community. We will make local decisions and prioritize as we see fit. Our grant applications can get mired in the bloated bureaucracy in Victoria unless we move forward with them ourselves. The no side suggests we dismantle improvement districts and hand them over to the CRD. We have a CRD liquid waste facility at Burgoyne Bay. We have been fully taxed for, yet it has never gotten off the ground. It's been mired in further bureaucratic studies, inefficiencies, and waste, all from Victoria. We've had massive board resignations on our CRD sewer plants and at our fire district level because our system does not work. The CRD does not listen to us. Victoria does not listen to us. They don't care. And nothing will happen if we vote no. Just like in 2002. If we want to manage our infrastructure projects efficiently and locally, we must vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now invite the no team for their response to the question.
I guess I have an overarching question, and that is to incorporate an entire island, because you have some issues with water systems and the fire department. It seems drastic to do that to solve those problems. When there are 5 water districts that have become CRD service areas, there are 4 that could convert to CRD service areas. You know, in the Incorporation study report, They talk about them converting when we become if we become a municipality, but they don't mention that they can convert now to become CRD service areas. The other thing that they can do is to become nonprofits, and the fire improvement district can do that as well. So I see these as solvable. And yes, going back to 2002, there's stuff that didn't get done, and that's when I moved here. And I know from the way some governance has gone on here that we haven't always elected officials that have been proactive in that regard, because some of them have been openly pro-incorporation and some of them have not been openly pro-incorporation, but that's their goal. We also have a first-past-the-post system so that we can have representatives that really were not elected by a majority of the voters. So yes, there's been some stalling. In 2004, the Local Government Act was changed so that LCCs became much more feasible. So one of the reasons that we didn't get on with an LCC is we were getting on with other stuff, and we've done a lot. In terms of our local services, and infrastructure, roads are huge. I'll talk further about our roads, but our property taxes, rural property taxes, won't rise any more than our present rate and what the rest of rural communities pay. And MOTI will continue to look after our roads if we keep our current system. Should we incorporate every nickel more that we have to spend on roads, we're going to have to pay for it. And you can say, well, we can decide what roads that we're going to do work on. Roads lead lives of their own. They age out. They tell you when they need fixing. And when they fall into the sea, and when there are failures, and when the pavement has failed, and there are safety issues, the roads dictate what we have to pay, and they will. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 8. Facilitating the right type of development is essential for any community. What form of governance best delivers appropriate development? And again, we return for the first response to the no side.
Thanks. Well, clearly our current system does have an official community plan, does have the Islands Trust that prioritizes the needs of the community. And, I spent the last 4 years as MLA spending a lot of time on the peninsula and seeing municipalities there close at hand and seeing what drives them. And what drives them, in large respect, is seeking out additional tax base. For them, and this may seem unfair to some, but for them, development in itself is a good thing. Whereas here, our official community plan, there's only 3 ways you can actually get rezoning on Salt Spring. If you create truly affordable housing, if you're providing a significant amenity that's actually identified and defined in the OCP, and the community gets at least 50% of that amenity, I can tell you that percentage is not anywhere near 50% on the peninsula. Or if you transfer development potential from areas, for example, in West Salt Spring, 230 acres were protected by conservation covenant, and that density was transferred to the other side of the mountain. Those are the only ways you can get upzoning. So clearly, the Islands Trust, its OCP, and the separation of land use planning from service delivery ensures that the community is at the forefront for land use planning on Salt Spring. Let's be clear too, the Islands Trust inherited the zoning pattern. We inherited the road system. And so it's done its best to deal with that fact. We've got development potential all over the island. The Islands Trust inherited that. That's not ideal, but the trust with its land use planning tools, which are among the most progressive in British Columbia, is doing the very best it can, and the community is at the forefront when they make land use decisions. They also the Islands Trust prevents any upzoning in drinking watersheds, which is crucial if we want to protect our drinking water on Salt Spring. We protect riparian areas on stable slopes with development permit areas. We've legalized suites. But again, all of those things, the community priority is at the forefront, not development pressure.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the yes side for their response.
I think the best way to answer the question on development is to go back to Bowen Island. Their development is regulated in part by a joint protocol agreement, mandated by the letter's patent. But nonetheless, the Islands Trust and the Bowen Island Municipality have a protocol agreement that talks about how they'll deal with land development issues. We already know that the Islands Trust has to approve OCP amendments. The municipality can appeal. In Bowen, it's never happened. The Islands Trust did turn down one, or said no to one particular OCP, and it just kind of went away. I guess there was an election in the middle, change in government, so it didn't pursue any appeal. Don't know if they would have anyhow. In any event, that protocol agreement has worked very, very effectively between two levels of government. In my view, Bowen, in spite of being incorporated almost 19 years and in spite of its proximity to Vancouver, I don't see community values, even population and even development remains largely unchanged. There's been some development, but population hasn't gone up dramatically. In spite of being where it is, 15-minute ferry ride from Vancouver. The first CAO of Bowen recently reminded me that after Bowen incorporated, Council decreed that it would not consider any rezoning applications from any developer until after a new OCP and zoning bylaw were in place. And that's exactly what happened. So the developers just sat back and waited for this new zoning bylaw and
30 seconds,
OCP.
please.
Incorporation doesn't automatically lead to development. If you don't want development, just make sure you have 4 of your best friends on council to say no to any development. That's pretty simple. It will not become the wild, wild west. That's what I want to say. Municipal government does not lead to chaos and wild, wild west and developers coming forward and getting exactly what they want. That just does not happen. Development does provide amenities. It also can provide development cost charges, would help pay for infrastructure. There's a number of things.
Your
Thank
time
you.
is up. Thank you. Although one of the magic features of alternating is that you can complete your thought on the next answer, should you wish to. We are on to the 9th question, and it is: economy can be an important part of a sustainable community. Which form of governance can best support the right economic model for Salt Spring Island? Yes side.
Thank you, George. Salt Springers make some different economic decisions than your average Canadian. Turns out that 2/3 of the workforce on Salt Spring works either part-time or seasonally. I always say that people come to Salt Spring to get a life, not to get a job. And because what is important to them is the life. So I think the normal rules of sort of economy don't necessarily apply. Every business, whether it's the smallest, so one-man home-based operation, to the bigger businesses, we're all navigating our way through the various rules and regulations that the different agencies, whether they're land use regulations or noise bylaws or we're just navigating our way through. And the mantra for businesses on this island, particularly small businesses, is keep your head down and don't piss off your neighbors. There is no economic plan for Salt Spring. I doubt, and there are no incentives for businesses to locate here or to, to help them. I mean, the biggest incentive that I'm aware of is the incredibly low rates at the Saturday market that we give to farmers and to craftspeople. I seriously doubt whether a municipality would do anything different in the way of offering incentives or trying to develop an economic plan for this island.
Thank you. Oh, yes, sure. Yep, you have 30 seconds.
I'm going to continue on here just a little bit. The one thing that I want to point out, and this is one thing that I was disappointed that Urban Systems didn't have, was the number of government jobs that we currently pay for in our community right now, that we're paying for, all of us are paying for. But that money's being spent in Victoria, and that money's being spent at different islands and different places. That money should be spent here, and a municipality will bring those well-paying jobs that we're already paying for here. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the no side for their response.
Yeah, like all the Islands Trust staff we're going to lay off. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be moving into a more pronounced debt-based economy on Salt Spring Island. We're going to be able to, and we're going to find it necessary to borrow money to pay for some massive infrastructure requirements. When an economy is burdened with debt, the choices that are made are no longer for altruistic reasons, but more for self-preservation. Both forms of governments could, in theory, support the right economic model, but do we choose to consolidate and concentrate power to choose that into the hands of only 7, or are we better represented by dozens of people who have focus and expertise on a different piece of the economic puzzle? Our current system is more accessible to get involved in than a municipality, as there are more positions. This means that it's easier for minority groups like young people to get involved in local economic decision-making. The single largest private sector component of our economy is tourism, and with its natural beauty, amenities, and artistic community, is one of the most desirable places in the world to visit. The Preserve and Protect mandate of the Islands Trust fits perfectly with this brand. Amenities that support tourism that have been established already include the Saturday and Tuesday farmers markets, Art Spring, the library, pool, and award-winning local transit. Furthermore, we've protected over 5,000 acres of green space since 2001, and 20% of Salt Spring Island is protected, which supports nature-based tourism and recreation. Lastly, it is flat-lined disposable income levels combined with rising accommodation and food costs over the last 30 years, which is the main economic imbalance that impacts most people I know. Unfortunately, this is not solved by a consolidation of power into municipal council. I wish it could, but it won't.
Thank you. We're now on to question number 10, and again, the first response will come from the no side. What are the benefits or disadvantages of the 2 governance options for our roads infrastructure? No side.
Yeah, thank you. I've already outlined that, and you know well, the vast amount of roads that we have and the poor condition that they're in. I have to tell you, you ask, why are they in poor condition? We should take it over and do a better job ourselves. Well, you know, one of the reasons is that MOTI has very limited funds, and they've been cut to the bone. They have limited staff. So when their employees have to decide what work that they're going to do. And when Salt Spring Island comes up, and Salt Spring Island is going to incorporate, they can say, well, you know, we could do that job, or we can let the roads go a little bit more, and maybe they'll look after that themselves. It makes perfect sense to me why they would do that. Now, we've been given an all-or-nothing deal. We either take all the roads, or MOTI keeps all of the roads. And we now receive more in roadworks per year than we pay in our real property tax. The Incorporation study report says different than that. We were promised an addendum that would look into those numbers to verify the BC government numbers regarding roads and money spent here, so that we could find out that it is in fact true that we get more roadworks at present than what we pay in taxes. I don't see the advantage on this island of becoming MOTI. They are a big organization, and
we can get them to do the work that's needed. We need to ramp up on that, and we have the information now through the Road Assessment Condition Report and the Incorporation Study Report. We can be really proactive about that, and it's in their own interest to do it because roads age out. So to limit safety and liability issues, they're going to come and do some road work here, and I, for one, am going to make very sure that they do. They are our de facto road reserve fund. They take all the risks, they pay all the bills, while we keep paying a BC rural property tax at a steady, predictable rate, regardless of what our roads cost. And here's the very best part of the deal that we've got with roads. We can put all the time, money, and effort that we would be spending on our roads if we took over the whole network, and we can put that money into many other good things on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the yes side for their response.
There's three things we know for sure about the roads. One is that we're not getting what we're paying for. On average, the province has spent, according to the minister, $1.14 million per year over the last 5 years. We pay $2 million in rural taxes, which go towards road maintenance. Under a municipality, we would get what we paid for. That's the second thing that we know about roads is that roads deteriorate. It's what they do. They're always in a cycle of being repaired and then gradually being deteriorating and having to be maintained and repaired again. It's what they do. We know that if we incorporate, we are the ones that get to set the road standards and the maintenance decisions. We get to make those decisions ourselves. Right now, the roads are 72% are judged to be in good to better condition. 28% are in fair to poor condition. Whether that balance is right or not is a decision made in Nanaimo right now. Under incorporation, it would be our decision. The third thing we know for sure is that we will get Fulford Ganges Road repaved, resurfaced, and widened to include bicycle paths. And we will get Walker Hook Road reconstructed, remediated. So those are the absolute undeniables of incorporation. It's an offer on the table to put cash into our roads that would not be there if we stay at with the existing system. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak? No, you're good. Okay, thank you. We then are on to question 11, and we're going back to the yes side on this, and yet let me at this point express, I'm sure, the general appreciation here for the remarkably focused and articulate answers we're getting from the panels. As a result, we're plowing through these questions like a bear through a blueberry patch. This is really good. So question 11 is this, and it goes first to the yes side. Which form of governance best enables responsible management of our finite potable water resources? Yes side.
A municipality is clearly the best choice to manage our finite potable water resources. Now, I took some of my water speech when I had the opportunity to talk to Gary when he was arguing that we had an integrated system, and I pointed out the disintegrated system that actually created problems for our secondary suites and our affordable housing project on Drake Road, which they advised the CRD that they would provide, North South Spring Waterworks advised the CRD that they would provide a supply of potable water, and hundreds of thousands of our tax dollars went down the drain in studies, and now they're looking for other ways to supply. But as far as the water issue, this is not necessarily potable, but what sort of resort community or community our size that has our demographic doesn't have a public laundromat facility? I think that says a lot about our priorities as a community. A lot has been said about the grants that we can get and whatnot, but we need access to direct grants as a community to be able to manage our infrastructure projects, especially in water, because we're going to be forced into fully funding the $28 million in needed upgrades for North Salt Spring Water, or we have to turn those projects over to the CRD in Victoria to try and get some grants on our behalf. And I don't know too many people who want much more CRD governance from Victoria. The Salt Spring Island Water Preservation Association had to be set up through the trust, and funding has to be approved annually. And it must receive 2/3 support of Trust Council. Trust Council is made up of over 90% of people from other islands. The people from other islands have absolutely no business, in my opinion, in our decisions on how we want to coordinate and manage our most important water resource and our watersheds. A municipality will bring all of the government agencies together, allowing an integrated approach to water demand, preservation, collection, and reuse. Our current system obstructs these efforts, and they are clear examples of inefficiencies, and they are a waste of our taxes. We need a holistic approach to potable water management, an approach only a municipality can offer truly. And this is our chance to responsibly manage our most critical resource, water. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the No team for their response.
Well, thanks. Well, water's a difficult issue because we don't have our drinking water sources fully protected like they do in Victoria or Vancouver, and again, that's the way it is. But we are making progress, and again, I would argue that we have, between the Islands Trust and the CRD, and Improvement District for that matter, we have all the tools that we need to protect our water supplies and conserve our water supplies. Land use, administrative and management capacity, and access to grants through the CRD. I mean, I keep hearing from the yes side that, gee, we're competing with grants for other CRD municipalities. We've got several $1 million in grants for upgrading drinking water treatment facilities on Salt Spring. 3 DAF plants, state-of-the-art DAF plants. All of the CRD facilities have had their treatment facilities upgraded, and if North Salt Spring were to become part of the CRD, they would have access to grants, and we've been successful in getting them. You have to remember that the province owns the lakes, and they own the groundwater, so regardless of the form of governance, you're going to have to cooperate with the province, which we've tried to do through measures like Water Council and SWIPA have been coordinating their efforts with the province. The Trust protects drinking watersheds through development permit areas. We've fully protected the Maxwell Lake watershed. We've got 270 acres protected in the St. Mary Lake watershed. In terms of water quality, our priority absolutely has to be water treatment. North Salt Spring, I mentioned the CRD upgrade in facilities and the grant funding that we got for that. North Salt Spring has got its ratepayers to approve, I think up to $8 to $9 million to establish another DAF treatment plant for St. Mary Lake. So we're making progress. On the water conservation side, the most important thing you can do is have progressive rate structures, which means that if you get into higher levels of use, you actually pay more per liter for drinking water. That's a crucial progressive rate structure that almost all of our water districts have in place. They're almost all metered. So clearly we have been addressing these problems.
30 seconds, please.
You can do rainwater catchment. You can do gray water recycling. We can look at reclaiming water from the Ganges sewer plant, which is sending almost totally potable water out into Ganges Harbor. We can use that for non-potable purpose. So we've got all the tools we need to do the job in terms of protecting our water sources and conserving it.
Thank you. Question number 12. Which form of governance is best able to manage our taxes and services? No side.
Well, we kind of answered this in a couple of different ways, but I think fundamentally the concern, the issue we have with Incorporation is that we are accepting provincial downloading of 265 kilometers of poorly built roads and policing. And we don't cover the full costs of policing on Salt Spring. The consultant's report has estimated an additional $800,000 to $900,000 a year for policing. The work done by Richard Kerr indicates it's probably higher than that. He thinks that's a conservative estimate. So that's the key thing around taxes, is accepting that downloading from the province. And as Greg said, it's a bad deal. Just look at it as a business deal. They're offloading $33 million in liabilities, estimated by the consultant. Again, we feel that's probably underestimated because they didn't do geotech, they didn't inspect culverts, they're not taking into account sea level rise. Nevertheless, $33 million in liabilities. What we're getting in transition funding is half of that. That's not a good deal, to my mind. So that's the key thing in terms of managing taxes on Salt Spring. If we take on our roads, as we understand has happened on Bowen, dealing with our roads, and then Brenda has mentioned this, it will dominate our community priorities. We have so many concerns around other infrastructure, water, affordable housing, expanding our transit system, expanding pathways. Roads are going to dominate the conversation. And it's not because of good councillors, bad councillors. It's the nature of the beast. And you combine land use planning authority with responsibility for delivering services and add on those downloaded provincial costs, any municipality is going to have to struggle with that beast. That's the basic problem here. The province is downloading costs onto this community, and it's going to be faced, any council, regardless of their best intentions, are going to be struggling with those costs over time, and it's going to dominate the conversation, just as it has on Bowen Island for the past 18 years.
Now invite the yes side for their response.
Thank you. Who best to take on taxes and service? I agree with Gary. We've kind of all around the mulberry bush on this one, but I'll say it again. Taxes and services, municipality, hands down, is the best form of government than our current system. And that's not any shot at any other organization. The fact is they all operate in silos. They all set their own tax rates. As I've indicated earlier, taxes have gone up significantly more here than on Bowen. There may be some extenuating circumstances, but not anywhere nearly representative of that amount of increase. And it's because there is no coordination of taxes or services. Municipality sets policy, undertakes decision-making for all municipal services. They set the priorities of what's most important based on what you say to them. Just think, you get to see a council every 2 weeks when they meet. They're there. The 7 members of council are on the island. 7 members of council with varying interests. You know what, if you're interested, you know which councillor is also interested in your issue. You know who you should be talking to. So that coordination of services, the undertaking strategic plans can only come with one level of government. There's nothing to be afraid of here, folks, in my humble opinion. Taxes will be decided by government. The service levels will be decided by a municipal government. The way we have it now, we're all over the map, and it's not effective, it's not efficient, and it's certainly not coordinated. Thank you.
I don't understand the panic over roads. We just got a letter from the new NDP Minister of Municipal Affairs last week, and they say that they've been spending $1.14 million per year on roads in our community. That is less than 10% of our current expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are on to question 13, which coincidentally is our second to last question tonight. Some of you may be relieved, others may be incredibly disappointed to hear that. Question 13 is this, and it will go to the yes side first. How would farming be impacted by incorporation? Yes side.
Thank you, George. Let's face the bad news first. According to Urban Systems report, the average farm will pay $200 a year more in taxes if we incorporate. The reason for that is because under the current system of government, farmland and farm dwellings are exempted from the rural tax. And under incorporation, a municipality is obliged to charge the same tax rate on dwellings regardless of whether they're on a farm or waterfront or up the mountain. They're only allowed to charge, they all have to pay the same tax rate. Now, I'm fine with that. I don't see why somebody, a family, with a large house on a farm should get a break on their house, their house taxes. I'm fine with them getting all kinds of a break on their land taxes because they're farming it. But I don't see why they should get a break on their house. So if we incorporate and we have to charge the same rate, which I frankly believe is right, the average farm will pay $200 a year more in taxes. Is that a significant amount? You'll have to ask the farmers that. But the thing I would say to you all, if you want to support the farmers on this island, get up and go down to the market or go down to their farm stands and buy what they grow. That is going to be a hell of a lot more help to them than trying to avoid a $200 increase in their taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, and the no team response, please.
There's a lot of hype about urban farming these days, but I'm just not into it. It's a bit of a joke, but not really. What do farmers think about this? I'm sure most of you know, and as David suggested, all you have to do is ask them. Go out and ask 10 farmers on this island whom you respect, and you'll find out really soon that the vast majority of farmers on this island reject incorporation. I'm one of them. I moved here to farm, grow food, raise a young family, and my story is not uncommon. Farmers do stand the most to lose, and the tax implications resulting in a 10 to 15% increase on day one under an apples to apples comparison, it doesn't consider the impact as we face higher tax burdens and the liabilities associated with roads and other costs. So that's a very conservative estimate in my opinion. Pressures on the agricultural land reserve will increase as land use and development control falls under the power of a local council. In reality, farmland does not contribute to the economics and tax base of a local budget in the same way that higher density residential development or commercial or industrial use development would. Currently, our tax base is 95% residential and farming and 5% commercial and industrial. Any municipal council would see that a logical way to deal with the massive tax burdens would be to increase commercial and industrially zoned properties to which the tax burden can be shifted. And no councillor will want to make this decision, but the systemic pressure to balance fiscal responsibilities will give them little choice, and at some point, someone will cave. Furthermore, we are having good success in implementing our area farm plan under the Agricultural Alliance, including the establishment of an abattoir, a 65-acre farmland trust, and a land for produce center. Our tourism industry also depends on the farming community, as thousands of local and international travelers come to learn farming as part of the WOOF and Workaway programs. We really need to preserve the rural nature of this island and do what we can to support local farming. In near unison, farmers are asking you to please vote no.
Thank you very much. And now for our 14th and final question of the evening. And again, this one, as per alternation, will go to the no side first. What would be the major impact, if any, on the island culture on Salt Spring? No side?
Yeah, it would be impossible to predict a specific major impact, but an acknowledgement that our island culture has been and is shaped by our form of governance is necessary. On the Incorporation Committee, I wanted to talk about the way culture could change, but everything was too qualitative for the committee's standard, and I understand. But with Incorporation, we'll be empowering a much smaller group of individuals to enact change by giving them broad powers, including local legislation like bylaws. We can all think about a bylaw that we feel would be in the interest of this community, I'm sure. But municipal councils become very reactionary. They hear and observe concerns in the community and they face pressure to act. Typically, this is in the name of public safety. For example, suppose there is an accident at a farm stand and the local council passes a bylaw to ensure that farm stands are safe. And if you don't have 200 meters to pull out and parking for 1 or 2 cars, then your farm stand is illegal. Maybe it pertains to signage. Maybe it pertains to building permits and non-conforming structures. As is typical in rural communities, there's a subtle aspect of non-enforcement here on Salt Spring that sets us apart. In reality, it's part of our diverse entrepreneurial culture. People sell things on their farm stands they're not technically legally able to. People live in non-conforming spaces. Businesses operate out of old yurts and sheds on most residential properties. But don't doubt for a moment that when we have a local government office here and bylaw officers, that they will have no choice but to ensure people follow the rules. Even if they don't agree with them, they will have no choice. Simply a good person doing their job and following the rules. One thing is certain, our concentrated and empowered council will be quick to legislate safety to shape the culture even more. I might be scared of the far right and the far left on this island. Culture in the hands of a few is a very risky endeavor.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the yes side for their response.
First, I'm going to zip back to the farming question for a second. Greg, I worked your taxes out for you on your farm a couple of weeks ago. Year 2, it goes up $30. Where's the 10 to 15% increase? That's not accurate. Okay, it's a 6-year phase-in period. And the average of $200 also includes $3 million homes that are on farms. So the average farmer is going to say a lot less than that. And if our farms have a problem with an increase in tax on average of just over 50 cents a day in year 7, I think we have a bigger structural problem with farms on this island. But let's go to culture for a minute. I grew up on Salt Spring Island, and my son, who's in the audience tonight, he graduated here at this high school. I graduated at GISS as well. It was at a different location at that time. My daughter's in grade 11 in this school. And for many years, it was very possible to be able to go through school, get a job on this island, and make a go of it. But I am seeing the affordability and the ability for young people to move forward and even get a toehold in our community as disappearing very quickly. Don't get me wrong, Salt Spring is a great place, and we really are a jewel in the Salish Sea, but we are seeing some differences, and I don't like the changes. I'm seeing school enrollment dropping. I'm seeing people over 55% increasing, and our demographic is changing and becoming less and less affordable for working families. A municipality can make visionary decisions, set aside land and densities for working families. I know maybe our system could do it now, but bottom line, it's not. It's not a priority for our system. It's not a sustainable option from any perspective to have our working folks commuting from Vancouver Island, and I'm seeing more and more of that. I had about 5 or 6% of my workforce 15 years ago was commuting from off island. It went down to 0, now it's up to 4%.
30 seconds.
It's going in the wrong direction. I believe volunteerism will actually grow on this island, and I think the culture of being a volunteer and working for it and seeing a simple and small government and people, locals, being able to make a difference in our simple and small government will increase our volunteerism and increase our interest in our local government, and I firmly believe that's going to happen. We will continue to value the environment. We will continue our little quirkiness of Salt Spring that makes us unique. Becoming an island municipality will not change who we are and what we value, but it may encourage more young people to stay here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we enter the third phase of tonight's deliberations, let me again thank all of the panelists for what I think has been a remarkably fine job of ventilating some really important issues for all of you tonight. I think everyone on both sides has done a tremendous job of getting at the issues here, and again, I really thank them for their focused, respectful, constructive way of delivering their responses. It's been tremendous, I think. Thank you. The closing remarks section is 2 minutes from each panelist. Again, following the alternation that we've pursued all evening, the first panelist will be from the no side, and you have 2 minutes to close.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for everyone for attending to the yes side. You're great folks. You're lovely people. Mr. Abbott, to Urban Systems for attending and the opportunity to debate the issues. Just a couple of quick points. Keep hearing. You know, we can't compete for those grants in that big bad CRD. We've got millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars through the CRD for a whole number of projects and facilities on Salt Spring, including affordable housing. On affordable housing, Salt Spring contributes to the Regional Housing Trust Fund. We have received 3 times more in grants from that Housing Trust Fund than we've contributed in terms of funding. And I can tell you that we have received more funding from that program than the 3 municipalities on the peninsula put together. So don't tell me we can't compete effectively for grants. Recycling funding, the CRD stepped in when the province changed the funding for recycling in British Columbia, putting rural depots at risk on Salt Spring and the Southern Gulf Islands. The CRD stepped in and made up that shortfall to ensure that they wouldn't shut down. The LCC, this is that and the 4 trustee are ways to improve our governance without taking on the risks of incorporation. And yes, Ken was very polite in not mentioning that I was in fact the CRD director in 2003 who said, I'm looking at the LCC. I did. But you know, I was kind of busy. You'll remember the 10 referenda that I mentioned that we had to get through to get funding for the pool, for the library land, for public transit. As Gregor Robertson said when he came here, he objects to governance at TransLink, but his priority is getting improvements in transit in Vancouver, not endlessly debating about governance. And that's, I think we need to focus here, is let's continue the remarkable progress that we have made as a community. Yes, there are problems with our governance that we can fix without taking on the huge risks of incorporation. This is not a win-win solution. This is win-lose. The province is downloading $33 million in road costs and providing half of that in terms of transition funding. That's a problem. It's not panic. This is a prudent business decision. This would be a bad decision for Salt Spring.
Thank you. I'll now invite closing remarks from the first panelist on the yes side.
Thank you. We've all acknowledged, both sides of the aisle here have acknowledged that the lack of coordination between agencies is a problem for this island. The no side's caught a bit on the horns of a dilemma here because acknowledging that there are they're proposing solutions to fix those deficiencies sort of exposes the weakness of the current system. If you're proposing solutions to something, you've got to think it needs fixing, and it does need fixing. The coordination does need fixing. Promises have been made before. As Gary said, he got busy. But where promises are being made again, and I would say, look at history and say to yourself, caveat emptor. But the thing that I want to focus on is Greg's comment that if we vote no, nothing changes. Well, that's great for lots of people on this island. But it's not great for lots of other people on this island. People who are not being served by our present governance system. I mean, examples. The lack of affordable housing, the shocking lack of rental accommodation, the lack of a public laundromat or showers. People are affected by that. Maybe not people in this room, but there are a lot of people who are affected by that. And I think as a community, we can do better than just say nothing changes. We can get out there and say, this is an opportunity. Let's grasp it and see what we, as the community we are, see what we can make of it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll now invite the second panelist on the no side for closing comments, please.
Thank you. I hope I can have about 15 extra seconds because I want to take us back to something that we need to be reminded of. The purpose of the study is to provide the Salt Spring Island community with appropriate information to make an informed decision about whether or not to incorporate. This means the study content will compare the existing rural governance arrangement currently in place to a municipal model as authorized under existing legislation. So in the report, we get to learn all about a municipal model with very broad information, what it can do, might do, what it is, but we can only see a snapshot in time or very narrow information. We can't see the current governance model. We can only see what we have exactly now. That isn't an apples to apples comparison. The result of that is that there's missing information, all that's possible within the current model. And there's many tools in this workshop. The local community commission, it doesn't mention, and it does, but briefly in the Incorporation study report, the conversion of improvement districts to service areas, CRD, 2 Salt Spring Island trustees, increasing that to 4. We're missing the letters patent. They just came out very recently, and they're only the key elements. And I believe that the entire report should have been built around the framework, at least of those key elements, because that's what we're getting. That will determine what our municipality is and what the restrictions are. We need the road cost addendum, and I guarantee you that it will prove that we get more in roadworks by quite a bit than what we pay in rural property taxes. Can we make an informed decision without this missing information? And we, as Gary has alluded to, who paid for this study and who benefits? It was the BC government, and dare I say the BC Liberal government. It downloaded quite a lot of costs, MSP premiums, ICBC, BC Hydro. They did a lot of stuff that was easier on them and harder on common people that had to pay. So I want us to keep the current model so that the trust operates as intended. We can use existing tools to improve what we've got. It's not that nothing hasn't happened here. A great deal has happened, and no government is static. It has to keep moving and changing. That's a given. We can use the big savings from road costs to grow the island, and so the whole place works better for everyone. And I'm going to be very proactive on these improvements. You can count on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite closing remarks from second panelist on the yes side.
All right. All right, thank you. I think most Islanders would agree that our current system is simply not working. We've heard the no side even discuss the tweaking and changing of our system. So I think everyone's in agreement we do need to make some changes. But other government improvements and tweaks and changes have been touted since 2002, and I haven't seen much in the way of structural changes. There's been one proposal, and that was to increase to 4 trustees, but that meant no difference to our undemocratic situation at Trust Council. It was only for local trust committee that it made any difference. I've heard tonight that we have the tools, and cases have been attempted that we could do this and we can do that. And, you know, I've been watching from the outside on this governance debate. I've been part of it for about 11 years now. And the fact is, these things that are being touted right now have not been done. If we've got these tools in the system, why aren't we using it? And I'm saying that we're being told the same story as in 2002. They haven't been changed. They haven't done it so far, and they won't. And these options were dangled before us, and I don't think Islanders are going to get fooled again. In order to make visionary decisions for the well-being of our entire island, we need to abandon the silo form of governance and take this opportunity to elect a local council to prioritize and coordinate our needs for the benefit of us all. I have always believed that the question before us is not if we want to become an island municipality, but when we become an island municipality. It will eventually happen. It's the way that communities govern themselves. And I say that time is now. I'd like you all to vote yes. I really think it's the best option for our community. Please consider the underlying factual basis of the information and arguments out there. There's lots of it. And whatever you do, just get out to vote. Let's make a record in our community
30 seconds,
of participation in this election coming up. It's important for us. Much has been said about development and the lack of trust in Islanders making decisions for our community, and I challenge you to look around at your neighbors when you get home, or even tonight here. I trust the people in this room, and I trust my neighbors back home, and I trust my customers in the store much more than I trust people from another community to make decisions for us. Come on, Salt Spring. We can do better. Let's vote yes and unite our fractured system and community into an island municipality within the trust and make a positive change for the future of our island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the third panelist on the no side to provide closing comments. Thank you.
I guess I haven't been there as long, but my view of this island isn't quite as bad as Ken's making it out to be. But the risk is ours. If this was a board of a business, I'd be advocating for concentrating and consolidating power. But it's not. This is a democracy, and I know we all acknowledge that Salt Spring is unique. And we can all likely acknowledge that, at least in part, that is due to part of our local governance structure. We have an opportunity now to jump off the ledge into the unknown realm of municipal governance. We want change. We are changing. We want to improve, and we have been improving. We want to solve some of the deep systemic issues we see on this planet and on this island. But this is an old movie we've seen before. It's being played nearby, so take a ferry and observe it. Grab a double-double on the way. Spend some time in the city before September 9th, and remember that separating land use from service delivery is vital to the preservation and protection of these islands. It's what makes us different. We have an opportunity now to show the world that there is another way of local governments that is working. We're already doing it. Let's show the world that we can come together under a foundation that we already have to solve systemic issues locally without the added pressure of fiscal liability and development. There's not an ounce of doubt in my mind that this island will change with incorporation. And I know that this is why people are voting yes. But I also feel strongly that we will see development loosened. All it takes is 4 people on one bad council. It's a huge risk. We cannot undo incorporation if we don't like it. And everyone's watching. Let's show the world that we are unique and that we want to stay that way. I'm an advocate for change, but not this type of change. We will change. We will continue to change as we have over the last 15 years since the last vote, all the things that we've mentioned tonight. Again, we need to resoundingly say no to the provincial liability download. Support local farmers, support local entrepreneurs, support the island's trust, and support an alternative way of local government that we see implemented all over this great country. Thank you again for listening to me this evening. I love this place, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to, after my short time here, sit up here and defend and advocate for such a unique system and such an amazing group of people.
Thank you very much. And now I'll invite the final panelist on the yes side to provide closing remarks.
Thank you. 3 points I want to make. First of all, whether there's incorporation or not, the law of the Islands Trust Act says the council of a municipality must have regard to the objects of the trust in adopting a bylaw or issuing a permit or a license. Nothing changes whether you vote for incorporation or not. That role is still there. So the Islands Trust will not change substantively on incorporation. The form of it will certainly change, but it won't change substantively. What this really comes down to distill it to one thought, is who do you want to govern you? The Capital Regional District and highways, or a local government municipality based here on Salt Spring? That's the issue. We've heard, you know, Water District, Fire Improvement District can't get grants. The response is, turn it over to the CRD. Then they can get grants. Solves one problem, but I think it creates another problem. We've given yet another asset away to be dealt with off island. I so strongly believe in an island that I love too. I don't have the privilege of being here all the time because of my work, but it's my home here, even though my home burned down. It is still my home, this island. I think decisions about this island should be made on this island, not in Victoria, not in Nanaimo, where Highways is, not by an approving officer who lives in Nanaimo that works for Highways. Decisions should be made here. And municipal government is without doubt the most accessible, responsible form of government in this country.
30 seconds, please.
Thank you. Federal government, it's way out there. Provincial government, it's there, but it's a long ways away. Regional district, for Salt Spring residents, it's still out there. Where do you want your decisions made about your future, about your taxing decisions, about your service delivery? If you want to read a really good article, Peter Brower wrote an article to the paper, A Municipal Engineer's Perspective on Incorporation. I won't go into it. Read that article. It's brilliant. It has such a balanced way of looking at incorporation. Encourage you to read it. So Peter Brower, I think it was in the Driftwood a couple months ago. Have a look at that. Thank you all for the opportunity to share this evening with you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I turn the mic back to Wayne McIntyre to provide some closing comments here, there's a couple things I wanted to say. At the outset, I set a high bar for this meeting in suggesting that both of these debating teams would be winners if the audience left here better informed than they arrived. I can say unequivocally that that's the case because of the very thoughtful comments on both sides of me tonight. And again, I want to salute all of the panelists for the wonderful work they've done here tonight. Please join me in thanking them. And my final comment, and so I'll recall a comment, actually it's more than the comment, it's a lyric from a famous rock and roll band, which is, without an audience, there just ain't no show. Well, tonight you have proven yourself to be an exceptional audience in every measure of decorum that one could ever hope from such a large assembly as this, dealing with such a difficult and sometimes emotional issue such as this. You have been remarkable. Thank goodness this is being recorded. We're going to prepare a best practices guide for the legislature that may change the very direction of this province as a consequence. So thank you. Thank you, audience. My pleasure now to, again, thank you for welcoming me to your wonderful island. I'll turn it back to Wayne for closing comments.
Thanks, George.
I'm going to be very short because most of what I was going to say have already been said by George or some of the panelists, but I'd just like to go back at the beginning where I said that hopefully today you'll be getting information and entertainment. And the aspect that wasn't mentioned earlier was the fact that it was pretty entertaining too. So I thank the panelists for giving great information and the respect and everything else, and it was really informative for those of us that think we know everything, and we don't. I mean, we learned a lot too. So thank you for that, and thank you in particular to George for doing such a wonderful job of handling it, and for Dan. Dan had a tough job today. A little bit of a side comment, the fact that Dan was a little bit concerned because he just got back from a trip in London, so he was very tired and jet lagged, and he said, oh, we're going through some of the things that might happen, but thank goodness, Dan, Salt Spring was very understanding and really treated you well. And thank you for the audience for your attention. It's amazing that almost everybody is still here, so have a good evening, and thank you.